Hey everybody, I am excited to welcome Kenzie Prosch with Magic City Pest Control. Welcome, Kenzie. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Man, I'm good. So Kenzie is here from Birmingham, Alabama today, is in town for the winter conference for the Alabama Pest Control Association, and has stopped by after the meeting today. So it looks like you're not completely exhausted from sitting through hours and hours of CE, and it's been a good couple of days though, right?
It was a good conference.
Also,
We'll come back next year.
there you go. What do you think about it? I know you got in town, what was that, Wednesday, and we were able to get a few guys out at the farm and do some networking and hang out, have some good barbecue and whatnot. But tell me about your experience the last few days at the association.
It's been good. We've actually been reflecting on it a good bit. Where I feel like at least from the owner perspective, like my favorite parts are actually like the lunch that you put on, just because I get to know you a little bit more. Obviously doing things like this. You know, we played golf the other day and that was kind of relaxing just to get out of the office a little bit.
Nice weather for that too.
Yeah. And so my service manager was with me and I don't know, I feel like we get closer during that. But the least favorite parts are the parts that you would think of in a conference. So
Right.
like how many vendors want to talk to you all the time? They're nice. But talk to Jeremy, my service manager. I'd rather talk to
Right.
So, at this point, I feel like, I want to learn something new.
Absolutely.
So always looking to network with some of those people. And so, yeah, I'm grateful that you asked us to the lunch. And
Yeah, it was fun. And for those listening, we're very fortunate to live here in Auburn, and we host a winter conference for our association, and we host there's a summer conference every year, and then some workshops throughout there too. But the winter conference is always here in Auburn, Alabama, at the conference center, and so I'm pretty spoiled that I get to leave my house and I'm there in 10 minutes.
that's pretty nice.
And then, so Wednesday we had, you and a few other pest control owners and some of our vendor partners just out at our farm and cooked some. Well, I didn't cook barbecue. I like to take credit for it. It was fire, and the barbecue was amazing. But it's really cool just being able to network with other PCOs and kind of get to know them on a personal level. And that's what's exciting about today. And then again, I'm super excited that you're here. And, you and I have connected over the last few years, and I know we reach out to each other occasionally, just bouncing ideas off one another, or, challenges we're having, or, opportunities and whatnot. So if you don't mind, maybe just start telling the listeners, who you are and a little bit about your company, kind of give them a little context for what your background is. And then, man, we're just going to go through and just talk about your journey, man, and how you got here.
I feel like no one ever plans on getting into pest control, except for some of the people at the conference.
There you go.
They planned on it. But, I never grew up thinking like, bugs, that's me. Like I'm going to end up doing that. Even after, so for my church, I served a 2-year mission up in Idaho. It's pretty common for people in our church to be in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I came home, I had so many friends that were like, oh, I'm going to go do door-to-door sales for the summer. Do you want to come join? And I was like, no, I am not going to be that guy.
I'm not going to be that guy.
I'm not going to be that guy. And this is not going to happen. And so, so I came home. I met my wife. We were starting to date and eventually got married. But during that time, I was going to school at UAB down here in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I got my degree in elementary education. I honestly did not think I was going to be here. And so, but during college, I had just a chain of events kind of happened. I got sucked in. I got sucked in. And so there was, I don't know, for me, it was a real busy time in my life, at least. So my wife also became a teacher. So she was doing her student teaching. You don't get paid during student teaching. So she's working full time. And then it's up to me to hopefully make a little bit of money to pay for our rent and everything.
Right.
And so I think I had 5 jobs at that time.
Oh, wow.
And I was in school full time. I don't like being busy. So like that, I don't know, it was good, but I did not make a lot of money at all. And I had this really bad car at the time. And I remember my wife and I went to the state basketball tournament in Birmingham for high school, something that we had a free ticket for. We could afford that. So we drove downtown, enjoyed the tournament, went back outside. My car was just dead, totally dead. And so we were sitting there in the car waiting for the tow truck to come and pick us up and take us back. And I got this email from someone in our church that I actually met on my mission, and he owned a pest control company in Birmingham. And he sent it out to the people in church, and he just said, "Who needs a job? It pays 14 an hour. You get a truck, you'll have some transportation if you need it. Flexible schedule, you can do it if you're in school. If you have another job, not a big deal." I think they really needed a test.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that, I was like, my car doesn't even work.
There you go.
We're sitting here. I told my wife, I said, "Do you think I should take this?" She said, "Heck, we can't even get home." Yeah, it sounds like we need some, it's not like I can drive my wife in the work truck all the time, but
Right.
those owners, maybe I could have. So I told them yes. And so they brought me on. And then it was just like a wild ride ever from that moment. And so they called me. They said, "You'd be perfect for this. You're hired." And that was it for like a week. They had some guy come out and he talked to me for like, I don't know, 20 minutes about like, this is what the back of the truck looks like and things like that. And he was like, "Well, I'm going back home. See you later." And so he moved back to Idaho. Well, he was to Idaho. Yeah, he was moving home. And so I was like, "Okay, nice to meet you." And so then the next week happened, and the two owners of that company called me and they said, "Hey, great news. We just sold the company. Do you mind working for someone else?" I was like, "I barely know who I'm working for now."
Right.
All I've done is said yes. I haven't actually been trained or done anything. And so they sold to some people that they used to knock doors for. And so I think it was just a good time for them to sell and kind of get back out of there. I think their wives, who are from Idaho, were happy to leave.
Right.
And so they sold it on to the next company, the next guys. They flew in and took me and my wife out to lunch, kind of met us a little bit. And then they went and they picked up the truck and brought it to our apartment. Got me a little storage, like parking, space in the complex.
Right.
And they brought all the products and put it in my parking spot from that point on. And they're like, "Great, your route starts tomorrow." I said, "Can I get trained first?"
Now, what year was this?
This was probably 2017, probably.
2017. Okay.
Yeah, so it was around there.
Okay.
So they flew out their branch manager from Kansas City, and he came down, and he was with me for about 6 hours that day, and then he went back.
Oh, wow.
And I'd like to think I remember things well. I still remember what he taught me that day, and so that helped me get started. But the very next day, it was my first time on a route. I remember going to someone's house, and like, I remember freaking out a little bit because they were so nice. And I'm in their house, and I have my B&G, and like that little screw on it that tightens and locks the handle.
Right.
That happened, and I didn't know that was a thing. And so I like, "Hey, nice to see you. I'll take you care of. I'm gonna treat the inside of your home," and then like push the handle and nothing comes out.
Nothing.
And I think it looks so dumb. I was just like, "Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties real quick." Had to run outside and call the Kansas City guy, and I said, "What's going on?" And it's just a little screw. I just, there's so much pressure in that moment. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but
Had to go check with your technical director.
yeah. Oh, yeah. This happens all the time. Just give me a few minutes. And so that was it. I had like 6 hours of training. I was the only guy here. They had a couple, I think probably about 200 customers or something at that time. And that was great. That was a lot of fun. They said, "Hey, if we do really well, you can get promoted to kind of be like the branch manager." You could say branch manager, more like service manager, but they call it branch manager. And so that was exciting. And so I remember asking them from the beginning, I said, "Okay, what's my goal? What do I have to hit to get that?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Let us think about it." And they came back and said, "Let us get 1,000 customers. You get us 1,000 customers and we'll promote you with like a good salary, a small profit share, like all this stuff that sounded really nice." And so that was my goal. So over the next 18 months, I had a lot of fun. We grew that thing. And so we hit 1,000 customers. I got my promotion. We hired a couple people underneath me.
That's fast then. I mean, that.
Yeah, it was, again, I said I was not going to be that guy. And in my head, a technician wasn't that guy. I wasn't knocking doors. I was a technician. I helped them recruit a sales team. So we did have a team of people coming out to knock for us. I was like, They had like 6 different branches, I think, at that time. And most of their attention went to recruiting sales reps to like Dallas and Kansas City,
Bigger
Las
markets.
Vegas. Yeah. And so I felt like I was getting kind of left behind. And so I said, I'm not going to wait on them. I'm just going to go get a sales team. So I recruited a handful of people, got them in. And then, as these situations always happen, someone's grandpa got sick and they had to go back home. They got nervous. They got nervous.
Right.
Abandoned ship. Knocking doors isn't meant for everybody. And there are people who have done it before, and I think they remembered why they didn't want to do it again.
Right,
So they went home. And so in that moment, it was like, no sales team anymore. It was just me and the 2 guys I had working for me. I went to high school with them. They both had sales experience. I just knew that I could sell if I'm going to hit my goal.
Right.
I know I can.
Now, had you knocked doors before? Had you been in sales before?
No, I mean, I served a mission, which you would think that you knock doors all the time, but I was in Idaho. Most people there are already members. They don't want to talk to you.
Right.
So like, it doesn't really make sense to knock on doors. So that's not really how we did anything. So I probably knocked like 10 doors in those 2 years.
Okay.
It didn't go very well. And so what ended up happening is when they all left, there were the 3 of us, I felt more confident that it was easier to hire technicians instead of finding a sales team again. So I flipped us to be the sales reps that summer, and we brought on 3 people to tech.
Okay.
And so now we helped service as well when we sold, but we went out and made some sales that summer. And I sold about 200 that summer, which I was pleased with, especially for our market and for first time doing it. And the other guys, I think he did 150, and then another one, 50 to 75. And we actually had the quarterback for UAB come and join us.
Oh, really?
That time. And he was phenomenal, but he only did it for like 4 weeks, but he sold like 75 accounts in that time. But then he had to go to training camp.
Right.
So we lost him, but all of our efforts. And then like I tried to work for referrals all the time and just did what I could because we were getting really close to that 1,000
mark. Yeah.
And so, but that was the idea, was the only way to make this happen is if I do it. And so that's kind of what we did. And then fortunately and unfortunately, at the end of the summer, when we achieved it and we got it, the owners are very nice owners, too nice. They don't want to let go of the technicians that we had that had our positions. And so they're trying to keep us on for year-round sales. Well, I didn't want to do that.
Right.
I got what I achieved, and so that was kind of what we wanted. My wife found out that she was pregnant at the time, and so health insurance became a much bigger thing. That was like a big thing. I was starting to graduate, so I was going to take a position. I told them already that I was going to go into teaching. That was kind of the plan. When I started, I did have all 5 of those jobs, but with pest control really picking up speed and like it was making me a lot more money, I was able to start to peel those away. And so at that time I was all in on it, really just trying to get to that goal. And so I think if they would have had health insurance, I would have stayed. Because I had some weird stuff happen in school. That's a long story for another day.
Right.
But it started to make me question, like, do I want to do that? Because I just got rewarded for my actual efforts, whereas in school, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And so that was pretty appealing to me. So I was kind of on the fence of, should I stay or should I go? And so if there would have been health insurance, I would have stayed. Because I didn't really have anyone overseeing me. I was able to just run it. Wasn't my money that I was using, I didn't waste their money either.
Right.
Like, I just had complete, I guess, autonomy to kind of do whatever I thought was best to help us keep growing. And so that was really fun. That kind of got me in there. I eventually had my brother-in-law connected me with a sales position. I became a technical recruiter for like IT companies. So I recruited software developers and positions like that. Good base, good health insurance, commission on top of it.
Right.
It was a corporate setting. It was something where it was like, I wanted to have an experience in the corporate world, even if I didn't want to stay there for sure. But how am I supposed to know unless you try it?
Right.
So that's kind of what it came down to. They had the health insurance. The other one didn't. They don't want to get rid of those people, which kind of, it almost felt like, is it me or is it them? And I was promised to get paid more than that.
Right.
And so I was like, I'll help you out a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll go that way. And so when I went to the technical recruiting position, I hated it.
Oh yeah.
more than anything that I ever would have imagined. It didn't take very long, about 2 months. 2 months into it, I knew like I'm not going to be here long term. But my wife at the time was still pregnant, many months to go. She was actually working at the University of Alabama, which is like an hour from our house. And so she was commuting every day.
Okay.
And that was our first kid. Didn't know how she was going to react to, being pregnant.
Right.
In my head, I was like, and what if she starts being too nauseous all the time and she can't make that drive anymore? And she had our health insurance. And so it was like, okay, I need to stick it out here for at least until we have the baby, just in case something happened. It's nice to have a backup plan. And so that's where I was. I was recruiting there. And it was very much a sales oriented position, just very strict KPIs, very demanding, very different, but it was nice. And so it was nice talking to the people. It was not nice because it was just a very like micromanaged. My manager sat behind me all the time,
Right.
trying to listen to my sales calls. And I hated it so much, I would just not make any calls. And that drove him crazy. And so
That's so different from like having the autonomy of being the face and being the guy running the whole business to kind of being, like hands-on, someone looking over your shoulder.
bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah, right. Start
Kind
back
of
over.
thing. It was different. It was different. And so I did not really enjoy it. What ended up happening is there was some lady, her name's Jan. I saw her like a month ago. She's like my favorite person. She made Magic City Pest Control possible. And so she posted one day on Facebook and just said, who do you recommend for pest control? And I said, I'll take care of you. Because in my head at that moment, one of my biggest factors was I do not want to pay for my own pest control.
Right.
I had it for free at the company.
Right.
Now I'm not at any pest control company. I don't want to pay for it. I know what to do. The products, yeah, I can pay for the products, but that's still paying for it.
Yeah.
And so in my head, if I could just get one or two people to pay me once a quarter, I'll go treat it. But now they're paying for my house.
Right.
And so that's what I did. And so when she posted that, I went to her house and she was like, oh, we're so supportive of, just the entrepreneur spirit. And that's why I talked to her a month ago. She's one of our favorite customers. She's been here since the beginning. We took her a gift card to Texas Day Brazil and just said like, thank you. Like, you made this possible. And she was like, well, give me the update. How big are y'all now? So I kind of updated her on our size and like everything. And she was just so surprised. Like, but she was so happy for us.
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
like, I had no idea. The first time I went there, I went in like our little silver Hyundai Accent with my wife's car, just a little sedan. I could not afford really anything. And so, and I told her about what my plan was. Cause I went there, I said, look, I spent $100. I got like a duster and some Delta Dust. I got one of those handheld spreaders for granules at Home Depot.
Right.
So I got a little bit of granules. And then I think I got a little case of Bifin, or just like one container of it or something. And then I got like a plastic B&G. That plastic B&G did not make it very long.
No, I can imagine.
But it was enough to get me started. And I had like a broken brush. And so that was like, it was from the other company. It was like a broken one that would look terrible on the truck, so we couldn't use it. We're supposed to throw it away, but I was like, I'm going to keep that at my house in case.
Just in case.
Cobwebs. So I had that. So when I went to their house, like, that's what I had. Just this little sedan. I had these products, and I told her, I said, I'm going to put down some granules today. It was in like December or January, something like that. I said, the money you give me, next time I come back, I'll have a backpack. I said, so I can actually spray your home when it gets warmer. I said, this is what you need now. Right. But I need that money so I can buy a sprayer, and I'm going to come back and do it the way it should be done in the spring.
There you go. Talk about bootstrapping, man.
Everything is bootstrapped. So I love to say it because I'm like, we spent $100 and then now we're at, I think, $2.5 million. And so, and that was it. And so we just kind of snowballed it from there. And so when I talked to her last month, she was like, we were just so thrilled because you just knew a lot about what you're talking about. And you just looked like you were having a good time. I was like, honestly, I was just so relieved to not be at work.
Right.
At the
Somebody looking over your shoulder,
Yeah.
asking how many calls you made and how many contacts and sales.
Instead of a manager that looks at you like you're just really dumb all the time or something, you have a customer that's like, this guy's great. And so I took care of him. I did a long service, explained everything. And it was just kind of nice getting out of the house again and doing it. And so she was like, hey, do you want my neighbor? They always use who I use. I said, of course. If I'm coming out here anyway, she lives in the middle of Montebello, like way out there. I was like, if I'm coming out here, I would prefer to have someone else with you. And so she called her neighbor, and her neighbor said, yeah, have him come on by. And so she gave me a little bit of money as well that time, which is great. And then I ended up finding like a third person that lived in a different spot. But I had like these 3 people that I just serviced them once a quarter, and I would service my home on the same day. So we all stayed on some type of location.
Yeah.
And then I think after the second time, or leading into the second time, I had learned how much I did not enjoy my job. I was like, I think I'd rather just start my own thing.
Now, had you, not to interrupt, but now had you thought about working for yourself one day? I mean, where did this entrepreneurial spirit start? Is it something you had in the back of your mind, and like, maybe I'll do it at that point? I know you had health insurance, you had a pregnant wife at home, but had this been something in your mind?
Looking back, yes. Like I think back when I was younger, I remember having this time where I played soccer growing up. I was pretty good at it, but I remember having this little notebook. I was in like middle school or something. I couldn't drive yet. And had all these notes in there. And it was like, okay, if I can do a soccer camp and I get X amount of kids and they pay this much, I'll make this much money.
Right.
And I'll have my friends, these 3 people help me so I can break off into groups, and I'll pay them a little bit to do it too. We'll just split it. And like I had this whole notebook, and then I never actually did anything with it because I realized that nobody would ever come to my camp because I was like some middle school kids. So, but when I started this company, I started having flashbacks to that moment of just like I enjoyed the planning side of it.
Right.
Once I want to commit to it, it's like, all right, we're going all in.
Yeah.
When I got the first few customers, that was strictly, I just wanted free pest control in my house. I wasn't even thinking like, let's take this to a different level or anything like that. I thought that I was going to stay. I was pretty committed to my new job that I just got, and I was going to try and get promoted and kind of work up, the corporate ladder there. And so that was kind of the goal. Especially because health insurance was so important in that moment. Going off on my own and not having health insurance was not really a thought of mine. And so it was just a little extra income. So that wasn't really it. But once, I think 3 months into it, they fly you out to Baltimore. They give you this long, week-long training. I think the owner of that company actually owns the Ravens.
Oh, wow.
He's part owner. It was a pretty good company, but good sales training. And I thought, okay, maybe after this, I'm going to feel more committed to the company. I didn't. I did go to the training. It was good to get to see that. And then I met all the other people there. It was like 50 of us. None of them enjoyed the job either.
Oh, wow.
So the turnover was really high. And the way that I approached the job was a lot different than everyone else, where I feel like I looked at it from like an owner standpoint, where like I felt like the funnel for that company was non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got in trouble for trying to help create the funnel because we were running out of people to recruit.
Right.
And so they're like, no, don't focus on them. Just focus on the people that are looking now. The ones that all the other recruiting companies are calling at the same time, where I was like, okay, we're not even building a good future here at this company for me to have success later. And so like turnover was terrible. I was not enjoying it. Management wasn't getting any better. The sales was fine, but like I didn't have this spark of, so this is it.
So needless to say, you didn't have a vision. I mean, like you could not see yourself there long term. And I compare that to myself when my first jobs out of college.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it was actually selling cars at King Acura in Birmingham. I lived in Birmingham for 10 years. I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to do this for sales experience, but I know I'm not going to do this forever. If I were to do it forever, what would my path be, right? Oh, I'd own a dealership one day. And I'm like, well, that's probably not going to be likely in my early 20s. And so it's hard to get motivated for that. And it sounds like it was probably the same for you, right?
Yeah, that's definitely, I agree. So it hit this moment where I was like, there's no point of return for me staying here. I'm going to go off and start on my own. And so I actually approached it's just crazy how this all worked out, because when I did door-to-door sales, they told me that there was a guy that wanted to work part-time to do knocking. And so he was a member of the church. I met him, and he came and, worked with us a couple of days, nothing crazy. But he was actually in IT. Like, his job was in data. And so, we knew each other through knocking and through the owners or whatever, but like, they just moved here, him and his family. So I kept in touch with him because I tried to recruit him and help him find a new job. He wasn't enjoying his current job. That was my job at the time.
Right.
So we kept in touch, got lunch pretty often. Well, his wife is now my business partner.
Okay.
And I was talking about pest control, and I was like, I think I'm going to go all in this. I want to just like, I got to get out of this job. And he was like, you need to talk to my wife. She used to run like an office, like a pest control, like CSR, office. She helped, run some of that.
So she was in the industry already?
Yeah, previously. She had done it before. And so she had experience. She was graduating just then with a degree in, I think, business management with a focus on entrepreneurship.
Right.
And so she was looking for something. And my personality, I can have the vision, but I love to have someone actually like be organized, help me do everything that I do. Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's what Sam has been for me. And so she comes in and gets things done. And so we had this good balance, and we started, and we met together, had a dinner, and I kind of shared it with her. And then we actually had one of the guys that worked for me that was from high school. He was with us too. So we had 3 owners originally.
And then just going back, this is probably around what, 2018-ish?
So this is January of 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all right. So right before the world stopped, right?
Yep. That's when we started.
So it's 2 of you, and you're looking to start this company officially. You have some customers on the side, kind of getting it going, and now you're getting to the point where you're ready to go all in.
Yeah. So technically there were 3 of us.
3 of us. Okay. So then you officially started in around 2020, right? And so fast forward to, January 2020, March, 2 months later, had you officially stepped out on your own at that point?
So yeah, so I guess the third partner will kind of explain that too. So Taylor is the one who worked with us, and he was looking for a position too. I actually got them interviews with the place I was at.
Okay.
They're probably glad they didn't get the job. But he was the one where he was able to make sales during the day, or service during the day. And so I could keep my job for the time being. We hadn't had the baby. We had our baby the end of March 2020. So I needed to stay there through March.
Right.
But I could at least put more effort into getting sales on board. I get my parents on board, get my brother, get some cash kind of coming in. And so we did that. But you hit a certain point where people need you during the day, and I'm at work. And so Taylor was able to do that during the day. COVID freaked people out, and I think it freaked Taylor out too a little bit, about like breathing in some things in your lungs after having COVID, because he had it for a week and was worried like, what's the damage on my lungs and things like that. But also the real answer is his wife became a nurse anesthetist.
Okay.
They make like $200.
Right. Pretty good money.
He was a very good, not officially a chef, but he had us over for dinner a lot. Cooking was his passion.
Right.
And so when everyone left for COVID in the restaurant industry, they're all trying to hire and nobody was there. He said, I'm going to step out. Y'all are good now, but I'm going to go try and get in with some of those nice chefs downtown. And so he went on with Hot Fish Club.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah. And so he was there as a dishwasher and worked his way up, and now he's at Helen. If you've been there.
Wow, yeah, man.
He's doing really good.
He's a 2 bites there in Birmingham.
He's super happy. We keep in touch. Like, it was just a good fit for him. It was a good fit for me and Sam to have the 2 of us. At that same time, there's just like a lot of these like cross paths, I guess. The owners I worked for before reached out and said, how about, do you want to come back and work for us? What would it cost for you to come back and work for us? And I said, at that time, I was like, because I was doing pretty good at the job I was at. Well, kind of.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't going to stay there, but like for me to leave and go back, take a step back, it kind of felt like, and not go on my own, I was like, I need health insurance and probably like 75. And they said, no, we're good. And then I actually met another owner, Joey, our current partner, later. But we met at the beginning just to kind of connect. And I told him, hey, I'm starting.
Right.
I met him at church and I was like, don't you want a company? So we got lunch and he was thinking that I might be able to come on with him too. But he saw that I was pretty deep into this. I was excited to get things going and all this. But like all of this happened in the first few months before COVID hit. And it was like, for 75 grand, I could still be at that company right now, you know? And so, but it was like all these different things, but we were in too deep. And so that was when I took my leap of faith. I was gonna be forced to either way. I had a day in mind. It was like June 1st or something, or May 1st, one of the two. And I told Sam, I said, that's the day I'm going to go quit. So I scheduled a meeting with him. Turns out they scheduled a meeting with me the same day to let me go.
To let you go.
They could see that I had checked out.
Right.
And so I was like, let me save you some time. I'm actually here to put my notice in and leave. And so I got fired and quit the same day for that one. And so when that happened, it was COVID. That was pretty thick. Knocking, in our opinion at the time, wasn't really an option. And that was kind of weird. That was honestly really hard because we thought, or at least I thought, like, okay, I'm going to quit going into May. May was my best selling month the year before or whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to leave and then I can get, I think like the year prior, I got like 75 sales in May. And so it's like, okay, I can make more money if I leave now. And, you know, we weren't paying ourselves yet. That was still felt like a ways off, but I felt like I could get there that month. But yeah, with COVID hitting, it was like, oh, nobody wants me on their door.
Right.
I know companies did it and they had success with it, but like we just didn't feel comfortable doing it. We weren't even well known.
Sure.
We had no reputation. I didn't want to start off with a bad reputation.
Right.
And so that's where me and Sam took some of the money that we had, because again, we hadn't paid ourselves. We were just trying to bootstrap everything. And we paid for a Facebook course. Terrible course. I won't tell you who did it. It gave us a couple of pictures to start with and to have the content we needed to test.
Right.
But the practices, they said, were not correct.
Right.
And so, long story short, we had to figure out, we talked to different people, we had different podcasts, we took their feedback, we figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why for the next, like I said, 2 to 3 years, all of our sales just came from Facebook until COVID was gone enough for me to get back out there.
Back out of the doors, yeah.
And so that's when things really picked up speed again. I mean, Facebook kept it really steady. We did very, very well with it. But that plus the doors at the same time was just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did really well. And, you know, I told you this already, but like our Facebook, like cost per sale was $25.
That's unbelievable.
We thought we were doing a bad job at that time. You know, again, like we knew we weren't perfect. We're like, oh, there's so much more to this that we just don't have time for.
Right.
And so I felt like we had the same ad running for a little bit too long, but I didn't have time to fix it. So in my head, I'm like, someone could be doing so much better at this than us. And now looking back, I'm like, we were killing it.
No kidding. Like $25 to acquire a customer, right?
Yeah, that wasn't per lead. That was per customer.
Per sale.
And so we were doing around like
take that all day.
$5 to $10 per lead. And we were able to close most of them. So we were still taking the leads and servicing at the same time. And if I couldn't answer, Sam would answer. And, you know, she had, you know, I think a baby at the time as well. And, you know, I did too, barely sleeping. It was a fun time in our life for sure. I mean, we enjoyed it, but it was tough. And so that's kind of how we got it going. And then it hit the point where me and Sam talked and I said, I think we need to hire our first tech.
Mm-hmm.
He can handle the services and I can actually just dedicate to selling.
Focus on sales.
And so we brought this guy in. We had this tiny little office. He told me afterwards he didn't believe we were a real company because the office was so gross and just so tiny. He came from Cook's, which is huge. And so for him to come to this tiny little office, but luckily as a recruiter, I recruited him real hard. We got him and he was the perfect guy that we needed at that moment. So he came on and started servicing and I started selling. I had about a month where I was knocking and it was going well. But then he came to me and he said, hey, I got a guy at Cook's that he needs to come work here. Like, you need to get him. I was like, we can afford him. What are you talking about? Turns out there was a manager, won't name his name, at Cook's that was just terrible. And they had this huge exodus. There were like 30 people leaving Cook's that were good techs. And so I was trying my best to just pull as many as we can. We still have like 10 of them.
Wow.
I don't know how many, but you know, probably 5 to 10 of them came from cooks and came from that one manager doing a bad job. At that moment, though, I didn't have enough work for 30 techs, 10,
Right.
whatever. I had barely enough for him and then for me to fill his route. And if there was excess that winter, then sure, I could help. I wasn't really looking for a second tech. So I talked to that guy. It was Jeremy that you met.
Okay, yeah.
He's our service manager now. I talked to him. He sounds like a used car salesman sometimes. He's going to listen to this podcast, so he'll.
Yeah, right.
There you go. Yeah.
Talk about you, Jeremy.
But when I talked to him, I said, you can come on and work with us as a tech, but for you to do so, like, you have to knock doors with me. You have to create your own position. We just don't have any work. And he was like, I hate it so much here that I'm willing to do that. And so I trained him how to do that. And he came on and he did great. And it honestly makes it easier for me to knock with someone. And like the two of us kind of competed. I feel like the first
Playing off each other, right?
Yeah, it was, it's hard to do it on your own sometimes, some people are great at that, but like, it's nice to have accountability.
Right.
And so the first day he came on, it was like, he made 4 sales. So I made sure I made 5. And the next day he made 5 sales. So I did 6.
There you go.
And it was 7 and I got 8. And so in those first 3 days, it was a good week. We're keeping our first tech really busy. And it was really cool. But before we brought him on, we had this barbecue with our technician, and then Jeremy brought his wife because she was like, "What are you committing to?" And so I had to talk to her and kind of help her at least trust us enough to agree to let her husband kind of come on. And so, I mean, she looked me dead in the eye and she said, "Are you going to take care of my family?"
There you go.
I said, "I will take care of your
Yes,
family,
ma'am.
even
Yes,
if it's me selling everything." We don't know how he's going to do. Luckily, he did well. And now we bring that up pretty often. And she said, "You kept your promise. You took care of him." And so that's why he's still with us. But he did. We sold enough to create his position. So we had those 2. And it's kind of snowballed from there, But that was how we finally got to knocking doors, plus Facebook and everything like that.
Right.
Meanwhile, I told Sam this, and Joey will probably listen to this too, because we've told him this as well. But when I first met Joey, remember, he was the one I met at church right where I was starting. I made sure to get lunch with him probably once a quarter, if not every month or something like that. I like meeting with other owners. It's always nice to learn from everybody. But something about Joey, I felt like I needed to keep him close. And so we had a good relationship. There were a few times where he had a customer that called me to switch to us. And I said, no.
Right.
And I'd tell Joey, and then they would, got a handle. Like, we had a good relationship.
Sure, yeah.
I passed him some mosquito stuff. He may pass us some bed bug. Like, it was a good thing. But I remember telling Sam in the first year, I said, I'm going to keep Joey close. I have a feeling that there's going to be a day where we need to merge companies to purchase the company I ran in college.
No kidding.
And that's exactly what we did.
Let me stop you just for a second. So what I love about that is, you have some people that, and not just this industry, but other industries, even coming from my insurance industry background, right? You have some that just want to keep everything close to the chest. They don't want to share. They don't want to go to network with other, owners or, competitors, right? Sure. I mean, technically you and I are competitors, right? We're in some of the same markets. Obviously you're predominantly in Birmingham, but there's enough business to go around. And I think you get so much more out of creating those relationships, because you never know when something like that may happen, right? You never know. And so that's a great example of where you kept that relationship. I mean, really right there in the same city. I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. Because we even had, there's another one, you actually might listen to it too, Alan Farmer. We still get lunch or breakfast. I like to once a month, but sometimes we're busy. So once every other month or something, but we'll get lunch with him. And he is primarily in Helena.
Okay.
Alone. Very dense in Helena. He's got a great business going there. And like, I've told him this. I said, you are one of the hardest people to switch your customers over from, because they love him. And like, he was born in Helena, like they grew up with him. He's a respectable guy. And so instead of me just trying to be like, oh, I'm going to find a way to switch his customers, I'm going to get this, it was like, I asked him to breakfast, and we've had this mutual relationship ever since of like, he trusts me, I trust him. One time he had COVID in the hospital and couldn't get to someone with a fleet job and asked us. And so we took care of it for him. One time we had so many yard sprays, it was unbelievable because the army worms, when they came through,
Oh yeah.
we didn't have another backpack. So Joey let us borrow a backpack for a day.
Nice.
And we took that back. And then Alan sends us commercial work or any work that's outside of Helena because he doesn't go there.
His service area.
He trusts us doing it. So we actually gained a lot of business, and we gave a lot of business.
Sure.
Termite work to him too. And so it's like that little connection of everybody, and mosquitoes to Joey because he did a good job with that. All of us benefited from each other's
That's
work.
great.
And so that's what really made that really nice and just kind of refreshing. I was looking forward to those breakfasts and everything with them. And so that was great. And even when I left the first company, the one I ran in college, I told Sam, I said, I don't want to poach any of their customers. I want to keep that relationship good with them because I want to buy that I want to buy that company back because I feel like I built it.
Sure.
And so there was a, mutual respect between us and the people who own that, and that allowed us to get that acquisition. They weren't for sale. I would like to, we just talked about it and made it make sense.
Right.
Feels like my recruiting background.
Yeah.
That at least, but no one's ever looking to switch jobs when you call them as a recruiter.
Right. Sure. No, absolutely.
So, yeah.
So fast forward. So now Joey comes on board and you guys combine. So there's now you, Joey, and Sam. So now you got 3 owners. And then you fast forward to today. So we're kicking off 2025. I'm not sure there's a lot that happened. I'm sure there's war stories. There's whatnot. I mean, so you guys, how many people do you have, locations? Just kind of give everybody an overview of where you are now.
Sure.
Then I want to talk about what have you learned, that you want to take into 2025 and to grow in your business? Like, what are your pain points, or what do you feel like your opportunities are?
Sure. So right now we're in Birmingham and Huntsville, like our 2 primary markets. Since we did the merger and acquisition, we tripled overnight when we did that. Since then, we've had, I think, 3 other acquisitions since then. And so now they haven't been anything crazy. It's not like, we bought Terminex,
Right.
But like enough to really help us get more of a footing in Huntsville. And then I had a really good commercial route in Birmingham, and that's been super beneficial. And so we were able to do all this. We found a way to skip going through the bank. So it wasn't like the debt is not as bad as you would think it is.
Right.
Like we found a way to make it work.
Yeah, some creative financing. Yeah.
So we've gotten a lot better at that, kind of guide us through. So that was really nice. And so we've done 4 acquisitions actually. So, and that most recent one has taken us to where we have these customers statewide. And so we're kind of in this process of like, do we commit to going to Montgomery or Mobile? Because the customers we have now are once a quarter outside only, and then never call for reservices. So it's like the guy that we had was just going to Mobile, get a hotel for a night, and then like that was it was an all or nothing deal. He couldn't just turn those down, otherwise he'd lose everywhere else. And so that it's kind of opened the door for us in doing that. But pain points, I'd say, is like Birmingham is very good. Like we're running that well right now. Huntsville is not ran as well. And that's just the truth of it. Yeah, like we're trying to fix that. Like we have a better infrastructure here in Birmingham instead of Huntsville. And so we have an opportunity to expand into more markets and really kind of get that. But I don't really trust us doing that yet.
Right.
We've got to get Huntsville fixed up a little bit more and kind of test those waters more before we entertain that one. So we have this opportunity on the table that we could go for it and have the same results as Huntsville, which is a much slower growth than Birmingham.
And it potentially spreads you thin, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we're kind of like, okay, we're going to hold off on that for a little bit, get this straightened out. I will say that one of the best things we've had is with the commercial acquisition that we did, we gained about, 60 apartment complexes. That was good. But we've been able to turn that into a lot more. I think we've tripled it.
Oh, wow.
And so we have a very dense market share in terms of apartments in Birmingham. We've picked up more commercial, like we did the Birmingham Zoo, and that's a crazy one.
Nice.
It's very fun. But Huntsville is picking up to where I feel like the commercial is outgrowing the residential side of it. And so that's kind of opening the door where if we did commit to Montgomery and Mobile, and the sales rep that we have right now is just really good at doing that. She doesn't have to be there physically, so we could have her break us into those markets that way instead of trying to find a door-to-door team or slowly build it up online. And so that's kind of entertaining that right now. But again, you still have to hire people down there. They're still going to spread you thin. So timing is a big part of it. but that's kind of where we're at now. And I know we were talking before, but like the infrastructure company-wide, not just Birmingham. I mean, we have a good thing here, but how can we make sure that we have the right people managing Huntsville as well,
Right.
kind of expedite that growth for us? And then how do we get that same thing and replicate that
Sure.
in the other markets? So
I think that's been one of our learning lessons over the last few years, because we've very similar, right? I mean, we've done some smaller acquisitions that got us into in some two different markets that we weren't necessarily planning on. Maybe eventually, as we you go down the road, and then you start realizing, like, where are my resources getting now spread? If all my resources are here in my main location, capital, personal resources, my people, I've got infrastructure, I've got, technicians or service professionals ready to go. I've already got a route. And now I'm going to this new, inevitably what's going to happen. Okay. Well, you hire somebody, it doesn't work out. Now when Kenzie's in the car going to service those customers, right?
That's what
2 hours away, right? Or
Yeah.
however long away. And that's certainly something we've experienced. What are your, for you and your other owners, which, I can imagine it's interesting having 3 owners, right? What are your goals? Have you guys sat down and done, put together a plan, not just for 2025, but like where are you trying to take your company? Like what inspires you guys for the vision that your team's buying into, to where you're taking this thing? Like what does that look like for you into the future?
Yeah, it's definitely different having 3. I mean, we love it. I mean, like, we really do. And again, it's especially with the merger and everything too. It's like finding that balance of, Joey had his own company for like 8 years before we came together. He's got a way of doing it. We had a way of doing it, and not everything that we do is perfect, and same thing for him. And so we've been able to learn and kind of adjust and find the sweet spot, which has been great. And so, but that's always going to be the case. Even for years to come, there's still going to be things where it's like, okay, Joey's a lot better at that. I trust him. I'm good at this. He trusts me. Sam is better than me and Joey by far. We trust her. We'll let her handle that. So we've been able to kind of define our roles a little bit more. And then, we've developed that leadership team and really had them kind of take over a lot of the stuff that we were handling. So now it's out of our hands a lot more. And I feel like that's where some of the speed is picking up from, which is fantastic. Still more to go. There's always something that needs to be done. And so I feel like Jeremy's one of the people on our management team. And at this point, he trusts, if I say something, we usually deliver on it, just like his wife. Right. Got to look him in the eye.
That's right.
We'll take care of you. This is how I see things are going. And we just kind of get it there. Once a year, we've done this the last 2 years. I like to work. My wife went to Disneyland one time. The grandparents took the kids. I had like 3 days of just nothing.
Oh man.
I had so much in my head because like I go home and there's like diapers to change and like there's things to do. And at that moment, it was like, I got nothing to worry about but food.
There you go.
And I was able to just get everything onto paper. And so we developed it's like a 25-page paper of just like a check on where we're at in the company. And so it's just like, it's broken up into sections, sales, marketing, service, everything along those lines, and owners as well. And so it's like, for owners, are we paying people appropriately? Are they do they see this as a long-term position or short-term? Same thing for the office or sales. It's like, do we answer the phone every time someone calls? Right. We reach out to leads every 5 minutes. So just kind of like a check. A lot of the time it's a yes, but when it's a no, we create a project. We have this big Trello board. This is like our project time of year. Yeah. Where I think last year we had like 150 to 200 projects, and we got the majority of them done. It was nice. Gosh, it was crazy. This year is less, but I feel like the projects actually get more weight for them. So it's like we have like 100 projects, but some of them are very bigger details to it, and trying to get it implemented. And so that's where we had probably 2 or 3 meetings. We went through the entire document with the leadership team, and so they know exactly like we're all on the same page. Right. It's like, that doesn't pertain to Jeremy. We're talking about sales here, but I need him to be in tune with sales, like what they're trying to achieve. Because he's going to have the techs, service it correctly, so we stop having them cancel, things like that. And so we've had our team together, and it takes a long time, and I can always see their faces getting real tired during these meetings. But I mean, it's very important. I feel like it really lines us all in the same thing. It kind of keeps that vision of like where we want to end up this year. So we set our goals like with the team in that meeting. Where we actually posted it on like a little vision board in the office so we can track it each month and keep, like the CSRs on the same page in the office and everything. And so they know where we're trying to go. But in that layout, I feel like it helps us understand like, okay, this goal is achievable, but here's the process to get it there. And so for this year, it's like, we're getting some of the, like marketing's been whatever, we're kind of getting that straightened out and everything to get it back down to where I want it to be. At $25 a sale, I'm saying I'll get that. Yeah. I mean,
what is your, when you look at your marketing, where would you ideally like to have your cost per lead and cost per sale?
I feel like 150 and lower is where I'm happier.
Yeah.
And so once it gets above that, it gets a little bit crazy.
Right.
So, and like we have a company right now, I won't name them or anything, but like we looked at November and December and it was like 500. I was like, we got to make some changes.
Right.
And so we're in the process of doing that. But not only that, it's like, how can we get these leads lower? And so that's where a lot of our discussion was. And it's stuff that we know of. We talked about this the other day where it's like, I've been saying this for like 3 years. Now we're at a place where I think we could implement this. And so with these acquisitions, one of the best parts about it is that we get canceled customers from their accounts that we don't pay for. Why are we not winning them back?
Right.
And so we've been in a good process of like nurturing our current customers and upselling them a little bit more, winning back canceled customers, as well as taking all the leads that we get and putting them in a drip down campaign. So that way we can market to them next year, not just this year.
Right.
That's something I regret we didn't do in the first 3 years with all those leads we got for so cheap. I wish I could have had them, planned out better and had them in a software to where I can still periodically do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now I'm paying for a lot more expensive leads that I can try and do that. But the $25, or I guess the $5 to $10 leads, those are lost in transition. And so missed opportunities, but same idea. And so it's like, okay, if we get our marketing kind of straightened out, which again, we're in the process of doing that, and it's looking really promising. But if we get that straightened out, and then the lady that's working for us now, she may listen to this too. She's been phenomenal. Like, here's Brooklyn, I'm talking about you. But both of our sales reps, the commercial sales rep and the residential sales rep, have been phenomenal. So both of them actually ended up on our leadership team to kind of be involved in everything. And so she's just really on top of it. And so the type of person where I can say, hey, can you test out these two initial prices and tell me which one is actually carrying more weight? And so she can give us feedback. She can price shop for the other companies around, and like we can make a more educated decision on how to move things forward.
Right.
So she's been really good at kind of getting some of that stuff in order. So it's like, let's say the marketing comes in and leads are more appropriate. That's great. On top of that, it's like, okay, we're closing a higher percentage because she's here with us and she's training some of the other CSRs that needed some help. So it's like our close rate goes up, our cost per lead is going to go down.
Right.
But one of the other best ways to drive that down is a free win back campaign.
Sure.
So that's kind of what we're targeting now, is trying to get these people, because we have, after I think just 2 of them, we had like 8,000 canceled customers we've never met. They have no clue who we are.
Right.
But they're in there. And so I think we did an email, and it's like, if you win back 10%, you're doing pretty good.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's the process we've been in there. As far as the owner side of it, though, like the bigger picture view, like struggle of what we run into. After doing all these acquisitions, you start to have a little bit of debt, even when it's healthy. Like, we're not hurting necessarily. We're not going under or anything like that, but we could have a lot more of these infrastructure hires taken care of if we took off some of that debt. And so you actually said it earlier, though, but like with some of those acquisitions, we end up in some submarkets that we don't really want to be in. And they're actually taking us away from our commercial sales in Huntsville, because we've had a lot more of that. And so we don't need to be driving an hour to go to this other city. So we just sold that off, and we're putting that money towards some of the debt that we have. So we have a goal as the owners to bring down our debt, as specifically the debt that is cutting into our net profit at the bottom, and so that's the stuff we're kind of working towards and getting towards that. So there's some price increases that are, some of these acquisitions are really far behind.
Right. Oh, I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, we got to hike up some prices, pay off a couple of those debts and everything, and just kind of get this back. And so And I told you, and I'll tell you again, I'm always impressed with the infrastructure that you have and the positions you have, because I feel like you have good people that help balance those locations,
Right.
which we are lacking. And I think for us to get there, we need that cash flow to have more of that. So as owners, that's kind of our goal, is to get to that point.
Awesome. So if you were to say, so you guys are what, 2.5 million-ish right now.
Mhm.
I think you mentioned maybe 25-ish employees between, everything. So 5 years from now, if you said, Rusty, here's where we'd like to be 5 years from now, what does that look like for you? I mean, have you guys thought that far? I mean, do you put sort of that in place? I assume you set goals for this year, but do you have you set targets for where you want to be?
That's the thing. I feel like it's like, yes, we do. And obviously it changes as it goes on, when you're more successful, when you're less successful and you don't hit it. But I feel like when me and Sam came together, we had this meeting. It was just the two of us. Where do we want to see this going? And I believe it was like in 10 years, 10 million. And it wasn't just $1 million a year. What's like $1 million? It was like, we broke it down. It was like, here's where we're at. Here's where we're going. I don't see why we can't expedite this and hire and kind of get there. And we've actually stayed on that track so far. Like, it's been very good so far. Again, it's not $1 million per year. We're not 2.5 years into this, and we're at 2 right now.
Same, hopefully towards
for just picking up
second half of that decade, right?
And the way it's going, it's good. And so that's kind of where we're at. We're fine-tuned everything to kind of where it is now. So that was that. But when people ask me that, it's like, when did I make that 10-year goal? How long ago was that?
Right.
It's like, is that 5 years from now, or is that?
Yeah.
In my head, I think it's 10 years from now. And so it's hard to put a number on it, just because, like, when we do these, that once a year document where we go through everything, in the owner section, we have like, okay, what's our 1 year goal, 2 year goal? And then I think it is 5 years from then. I actually can't remember the 5 year one. That's the one where it's like, we put that and it like adjust a little bit every year, but really it's like the 1 to 2 year where I'm like,
that's where you can really
just need to go all in. And because, like, I feel like I'm not gonna say I can predict the future, but I've had a couple of experiences where I called what was going to happen.
Right.
But it all depends on how this year goes. And so it's like, I have a hard time saying it until like the next month is going to be very telling on what I think the next few years are going to be, if we get the projects done, which right now the right people are completing them correctly.
Right.
But if they stop, that could really change everything for us. And so I would like to see, I feel like the revenue follows. I would like to get it to where we have a really good base in Birmingham. We do now, but I want to get that a little bit better. I want Huntsville to be more self-sufficient and running the way it should be, to where we can actually get Montgomery and Mobile. I don't expect those 3 branches to be as big as Birmingham. That one is just, there's something special to it, I think.
Sure, yeah.
Whereas the other 3, but if we could get them to a very healthy range to where they're growing at a steady pace, that's my goal. If you had to say in the next few years, what do I want? That's what I want. Yeah. The revenue to come with it, I hope it's higher than what I'm thinking.
Yeah, right.
So it's hard to say.
No, that makes sense. And I like how you break it down in that 1 to 2 year, but you at least have a target out there 5 years from now to, hey, are we on pace, the next 1 or 2 years to be in contention, right? To be there in 5 years. And we do the same. I know we've talked about EOS a little bit, and you're reading the book Traction right now. Yeah. And we have our 10-year target, and then we have our 3-year picture, then our 1 year goal. And I think for us, the 3-year target from now, from the beginning of this year, is to be 12.5 million is where we identified we need to be. So we got some work to do, and we've got some work to do. But it's it's exciting to look back, and I talked about this in another episode about I'm my own worst critic. You know what I mean? Like,
that's how I feel.
You forget to look back sometimes and celebrate the wins and all the positive things that happen, because you're if you're a visionary, right, then you see how things not as they are, but how they could be, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty awesome that y'all are able to look at that 5-year target. And then
I was going to say, though, kind of on top of it, that's like when we do that plan, again, like the 25-page document, that's, again, I'm sure boring for the team at times, but I enjoy it. Because it helps kind of get that vision a little bit clearer. But not only that, I had to tweak all the questions from the year prior. I originally made it where it was like, okay, we can use this next year. Like, this is a broad
like
question.
An organizational health checklist, right? Or a checkup, I guess.
That was the intent. So it was like, are we answering the phones every time it comes in? I'm like, that's a broad enough question to where that should be answered yes. For the future, I try to have questions like that, but, kind of break it down, from big to small. But then going into this year, I shared it with the team, broke up their sections and gave it to them. And we were trying to do this quick. I didn't get to review it. And they're all like, these aren't really up.
These aren't relevant.
Yeah, it's too easy. And so it was like, of course we answered in 5 minutes at a time. And I was like, or, answer the phone calls, answer the leads in 5 minutes and things like that. I was like, okay, well, I was like, scrap it. Let me review it again. And so I had to go down and tweak everything. Because there were some questions on there. And this is where I think it's a compliment, where it's like, do we do this? And they were like, that is the easiest question I've ever had. Yeah, they're like, duh. And I'm like, well, that wasn't a duh last year. There's a reason I put that in there. And so the nice thing was, me, Sam, and Joey agreed because we're the ones we actually went to the document, just us three last year. And then this year we felt it was important to have everybody. And so when we looked at it last year, it was like, oh, we should be doing this. But the answer is no, make it a project.
Right.
And then we got, again, the team, but then kind of trained them and got them where it is. And so I think they probably took it for granted in that meeting of why the heck is this on here?
Right.
And then, so we took a moment in the meeting to just say just so y'all know, the answer was no for a lot of these questions last year. And so it was actually very rewarding for me, Sam, and Joey to look back and be like, so that's the progress we made last year. Because even if the revenue, whatever it looks like compared to the year before, that gave us a really good, I think it forced us to slow down because other people were talking about their departments. I always tell our managers, though, I'm like, the higher you get, the less people say, good job.
Yeah.
And say, the data is going to be your pat on the back. Sometimes from people around you and our leadership team. But I'm like, you have to find ways to pat yourself on the back. Because, the one who's going to come tell you is probably the one you don't want to come tell you. They're suck up or something. But with that document and having forcing us to slow it down and reflect on it, that kind of felt like our pat on the back.
Nice.
And same thing for the people who were involved in that process from last year. And they were like, it was nice. It was just like, okay, this is working. Because I doesn't feel like it,
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Now, if you were wrapping up, just kind of tying all this into a bow as we're talking into, goals for this year and into the future, I'm curious if this is something off the top of your head, or you may have to think about it for a second, but if you were to break down your business, let's just say, KPIs, right? So key performance, indicators. What would be let's say the top 3 that you guys, because I can tell you're a smart guy. You track and monitor and measure everything, which I think is brilliant. One of my mentors told me that a long time ago. Rusty, track and measure everything, especially marketing, right? To make sure we're getting an ROI. But if you were to break down your business, then, your top, 3 to 4 or 5 KPIs to know if it's healthy, if it's going in the direction you want. What do those look like for Magic City?
The top 2 I know for sure, because those are kind of our big 2. Because when we did this whole process with our team, we said, what are the goals? Every department set their own goal.
Right.
So they're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to work on that. I guess I can give you I got the top 3. But it's like, okay, you're going to work on cancellations. You're going to work on less free services, just whatever, they all kind of set their own things. But then after hearing all their input, we came together and said, okay, but what's our team's goal?
Right.
What are we all aiming for? And so that's kind of where we were. And so I'd say the big 3 things, cancellation's one of them. That's you're going to have cancellations, but that's a hard one to get a handle on, especially the bigger you get.
Because it matters now, and maybe not as much that first year, but right now it can be significant, right?
If you have 10 customers and lose 1, it's 10%, but it feels like 1.
Right.
You can get that back, but I'm not saying we have 10% now, but 10% of what we're at now would hurt.
Sure.
It stayed the same as when when you're smaller.
Right.
And so you have to put more of an emphasis. And so we've had the right people in the right place bringing that down and making it to where they can develop more of a training to pass to the others in the office. And so kind of help get that out there. Because no one likes cancellations. Those aren't very fun calls.
Right.
You kind of have to have more of a sales mindset where it's I'm not letting this conversation go for a little bit. I'm going to keep you as long as I can.
That's right.
So the cancellation rate is one for sure. I'd say out of the department goals, that's probably the number one focus that needs to be focused on. And that takes effort from everyone, not just that department, but they're responsible for it.
Right.
I'd say the big two, which is like absolutely like the team's top goals. We have a primary and a secondary goal. And so the secondary goal we have is just revenue. And this is like on field routes. When you look at your dashboard, it's like the recurring annual revenue for the next 12 months.
That's right.
We want to get our contracts, not necessarily what we collect this year, but contracts. We want to get it to about $3.5 million. We think we can beat that, but I think we all agreed where we want a year where we gain $1 million in contracts. So from 2.5 to 3.5, hopefully we go past that if we do everything right. And so far we're off to a good start with that. But our goal is $3.5 million. So on that vision board, we have this little thermometer and they're coloring it in.
Oh, love it.
I think I'm tracking that. But our primary goal, the overall goal, we all voted on which one is the most important for right now. And I really love that we landed here, is our cost, or like revenue per mile. And so that's where we've always measured, what does the average route look like in terms of mileage, total miles that we drove for that month, obviously the revenue that we brought in and things like that. Now that is based off of our revenue collected and then, miles, things like that. And so really that breaks it down to where it's like, I think we're at like $12 a mile or something like that. And our goal is to get it to 15. And we'll be able to get it there pretty easily. But our goal was to not just get it to 15 once. It was because we were like, do we average that for the year?
Right.
Because, with the acquisition we just got, they are 13 years behind on pricing.
Right.
It brought that down a lot. And so it's like some of the, $8, $9 where we should be at 12. And so some of the price increases, selling off those, kind of excess locations, I guess, and just really centralizing our drive time and everything. And then we've been doing more training with our office staff on scheduling and how to look at that. And when does a reservice need to be done today?
Right.
Which one can I wait till tomorrow kind of thing. And so this is really like, if the technicians have less reservices, we drive less miles.
Yep.
If we're actually, if you do collections, that still helps it because that's actually 0 miles,
Right.
But like, is our pricing where it needs to be? All these different factors. Are we retaining customers, not letting them cancel? Everything like that. And so we wanted it to be where we hit $15 per mile and then we keep it there. Even if it takes us to November, we hit it and then we maintain it for December, that still hits the goal. But if we hit that next month, we want to maintain it for the rest of the year. And I think we can get it a lot higher. And there's some things field routes could do too. And I've already brought that up with them.
Awesome.
So that's our primary goal is to
That's really good. Really good. I'm thinking, as you're saying this, I'm just running through what some of our KPIs are. And we're, we have a scorecard that we review weekly, our top things, for the whole company. And now our goal this year is to break that into departments. Like you mentioned, and each department, of course, will have different ones. And some of them, are aligned with others. But, I think of gross profit. That's where I've really learned that's where you can really impact the bottom line, your net income, right? But looking at that, your cost of goods sold, right? And so as we talk about how can we put KPIs around our gross profit goals, because we have a goal, like we went from 50% to, I think we finished at 69% in gross profit for our company this year. And mainly because we were just tracking it. We had a goal to set for it, but, what KPIs can we put in place that's going to, proactively, if we do these things, it's going to have the result of the gross profit, and the revenue per mile absolutely does that, right?
That one helps a ton because maybe it's because we have 3 owners and we have to be really good with the money too. Maybe we get it a little bit easier, but like our gross profit is really, really high and our net profit is extremely high, but it cuts off, like it gets taken out from that debt on the back side. So that's why we made that one our goal. Like the owner goal is the net profit. That's our number one goal.
Yeah.
But to get there, we need the 3 things we just mentioned, right? Team to help us kind of get that. And so it's been great. I mean, Jeremy, again, the service manager, like he bullies around those vendors. I mean, we get some good prices. So his goal is just bringing down that, the products and everything like that.
Yeah.
So naturally he's got that taken care of where, hopefully we see the gross profit go up, but I think we've been fortunate there to where the mileage, revenue per mileage is where we gravitated towards. Hopefully it benefits it too.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, wrapping up, do you have any advice? I used to ask this question, earlier in the podcast years, I would always ask, hey, if you were to start a pest control company today, and you're like us, like we started pretty much at the same time, right?
Mhm.
During 2020, during the worldwide pandemic. And I love asking this to pest control owners that have been in the business for a while, but even for you, if there was one thing you feel like you said, Rusty, looking back in hindsight, if I were to do one thing differently, right, what would that be? Like if you were starting a pest control company today and you're ready to go, what is one thing that you would do differently in today's world in 2025 to start a pest control company?
Well, thinking back at like, what would I have done differently to get us better results today? Like that's, if that's kind of the same question, I guess, but like, what would I have done different is the marketing. Like that's absolutely the thing. I would have held on to that and I wish I knew. Okay. So one of my biggest regrets
Yeah.
is in me. It drives me insane crazy. And I won't get into too much depth on it, but like there's a piece of data in Facebook that's like, if you had one thing to track, is this ad healthy? It's like this one number.
Right.
And if you can have, I think the industry standard for ads like that is if you can have it above like 79, like 0.79. So our goal is always to have the ads give us 1% or higher, which we did well. A lot of our ads were in like the 3 to 6% range. Wow. Very good. But there was one time, it was the people we took the course from. They told us wrong. And it's my biggest regret because we had one ad. We learned that sometimes the data shows your ad is healthy, but the algorithm hasn't caught on yet.
Right.
And so it's like if you let it run for another day or something and it catches, it just takes off. And so, but we asked them and said, because we didn't have a lot of money at that time,
right.
We were really thin. It was like $15 or something. And so, but you need money to learn if it's going to work or not. And so we were like, we reached out to them and said, how long do we let this run for before we know we're wasting money? Is it like 2, 3, 4 days, or is it a certain amount?
Right.
And they gave us some like concrete answer. And what I've learned is if you get a concrete answer in marketing, it's usually
right.
bull.
I think it's pretty fluid in marketing. It changes a lot.
It's case to case. And so they're like, oh yeah, if you've had that running for 48 hours and you haven't seen any leads come in or something, like turn that thing off. And I didn't know how to read the data at that time yet either. We learned this later. One day I looked back and I said, what was the best ad we had? And it was during COVID. And it was like, the phrasing was actually kind of COVID specific, where if I turned it on today, it wouldn't allow it. Right. Because they think you're doing something weird with COVID terms. Right. I don't know. So we were not allowed to turn it on when I noticed this mistake. But the number, again, 0.79 is the standard, more than 3 to 6. It was like 25%. It was an unbelievable ad. And for that 3 to 6% range we were in, we're getting $5 leads. 25% on that one. If we would have let that run for probably another day, I think it would have taken off. Right. And we could have had what could have been less than $1 per lead, and us to close that. And at the money that we had at that time, which is not much, right? At $15 would have carried a lot more. And I think we could have had that ad run for probably 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah. And that would have made a really big difference for us at that time. We were not, so we weren't paying ourselves yet.
So what's that lesson? If you were to really summarize that, is it maybe just being more, in tune with the marketing? I mean, obviously you were, but how would you learn from that today specifically? Or whether it's, hey, you outsource some of it, you would have kept it a little bit closer, or.
I think that's the thing. I think it depends on how you're approaching it. Because if you have a little bit of money, or if you're at least able to spend a little bit, like if we said, all right, here's the $1,000, that's more than what we had. Right. And like get this going. If we could have paid a marketing company at that time, we would have skipped all the time it took us to learn how to do the marketing. Maybe the results wouldn't have been good at the time, but at least we could have focused on something else. Right. And so like that expertise, with the way that we bootstrapped it, we had to go find the expertise. But if we were able to do it now and had, we're pretty young and like just had kids and like, I'm sitting there just trying to get a little bit of cash to buy a backpack, I couldn't afford to pay someone some marketing fees for it, and then do a little SEO work that may or may not work for a while or something. And so, I wish I could have gone back with the information we had now, or at least had someone to talk with. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. I wish we could have had that knowledge going into it, but if you're able to pay for that knowledge from a company, then that's great, because you can skip that and focus on something else. But if you're in our position, call me. I'll walk you through it.
Right.
Like I'm happy to help.
But too, for us trying to scale quickly over the last few years, we've hired marketing companies that really, painted this rosy picture. And really the experience was maybe a company that's a jack of all trades, master of none. That's what I really learned. That we're good at the Facebook and social media ads. We're good at Google. We're good at direct mail and all these things. And you kind of turn it over to them. And of course, for our due diligence, like, all right, well, at least let's make sure we're tracking and measuring so we can pull the cord if we need to. So if it weren't for that, it saved us thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. So very similar to you, I think that's something that I'll learn. But I think if you have a marketing mind, which you do, I think that's how you really kind of learn, though. That's when you do it yourself, it forces you to problem solve and do critical thinking to figure it out. So now when you go outsource that to another company, you kind of know what to look for, right? Whereas if you start day one and just hand them the keys to your credit card, the keys to your bank account, it can really bite you, I feel like. And so
maybe to tack onto that, though, because doesn't matter if you come in with money or not with the money, but it's what I said earlier, where it's like, have that drip down campaign. Any lead that you get, if you could just store it and just continue to market to them.
That's right.
Because even if it's just a organic call on Google or they found you or a friend recommended whatever, and you're just not able to close it, you can still store that away and just send them an email once a year that says, hey, I'm here if you need me. That's at least, we would have a much larger marketing pool right now for a cheaper cost per lead. And we lost that because we were, again, not a lot of money. So we had to we did so many free test trials of these different lead gathering softwares. And so it was like, all right, we had Zapier or whatever. And we had a 2-week free trial, and then we connected that to a spreadsheet. And then we had high level for a little bit to test try that. And then, but every time we switched, we lost those leads, and we didn't even think to somehow transfer them because we were just so worried that we were doing the wrong thing in the first place.
Right. That's funny. You bring up a really good point. It's the life cycle of a lead. And actually, I wrote that down as we spoke earlier because you touched on that a few times. I think there's a ton of value in it because I don't think probably we in the industry do it very well, and even in other industries. But I think of getting that lead, you pay a lot of money to get that person to raise their hand to give you an opportunity to earn their business. And if you don't earn it, what do you do with that lead? And there's a whole system and a principle that I've sort of worked off of over the years. And I've made a note of that. I'm going to do another episode specifically because you've inspired me to talk about the A Corp principle. And so we'll do that in a future episode. But Kenzie, man, I appreciate you being here. It's been good seeing you over the last few days. And, we've got a really good, group of folks in our state association. And I think you're seeing a lot of change and positive change and progress happening in our association and people like yourself that have energy and are doing things the right way. And man, I really appreciate you taking time to share with us today.
Thanks for having me. I do appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to learn more about Kenzie, I'm sure you can just Google Magic City Pest Control online. I know I checked him out a few years ago when we got connected, and you guys do a great job, by the way, of a very professional image, your website, your social media, and everything. So it's very impressive. Kenzie, thanks again, man. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right.